Niccolò Machiavelli begins his philosophy with a direct and often uncomfortable observation about politics and human behavior. He believed that many political thinkers before him described how rulers and societies should behave according to moral ideals, but they often ignored how people actually behave in the real world. In his view, politics cannot be understood by imagining perfect leaders or perfectly virtuous citizens. Instead, it must be studied by observing human nature as it truly appears, with all its ambitions, fears, desires, and conflicts. Human beings, according to this view, are not always guided by virtue or moral principles. People can be loyal and cooperative, but they can also be selfish, ambitious, and unpredictable. They often change their behavior depending on circumstances. A person who seems loyal in times of stability may act very differently during moments of fear or uncertainty. Because of this, anyone who wishes to understand politics must recognize that human nature is complex and sometimes unreliable. From this perspective, he began examining the nature of power. Every society requires some form of leadership to maintain order and stability. Without authority, disagreements between individuals or groups could easily grow into chaos. Laws, institutions, and leadership exist to prevent this chaos and create conditions where people can live and work together. However, the challenge for any ruler is maintaining stability in a world where human behavior is uncertain. A leader cannot rely entirely on goodwill or moral virtue from others. People may support a ruler when they feel safe and prosperous, but they may withdraw their loyalty when circumstances change. Fear, ambition, and personal interest can quickly reshape political alliances. For this reason, he believed that successful leadership requires a clear understanding of both human nature and the realities of power. A ruler must be able to recognize how people behave in different situations and respond accordingly. This does not mean abandoning morality entirely, but it does mean recognizing that strict adherence to moral ideals may not always be practical in difficult political situations. One of the key ideas in this philosophy is the concept often described as virtù. This term does not simply mean virtue in the traditional moral sense. Instead, it refers to the qualities that allow a leader to shape events, respond effectively to challenges, and maintain stability within a state. These qualities include intelligence, courage, decisiveness, adaptability, and the ability to act boldly when necessary. A ruler who possesses virtù understands how to take advantage of opportunities and how to respond when unexpected events threaten stability. Political life is full of unpredictable changes, including wars, economic difficulties, natural disasters, and shifts in public opinion. Leaders who hesitate too long or rely only on idealistic expectations may lose control of events. Alongside virtù, he also emphasized the role of fortune. Fortune represents the unpredictable forces that influence human affairs. No leader can control every event that affects a society. Natural disasters, economic changes, and unexpected conflicts can alter political conditions very quickly. Fortune introduces uncertainty into all human plans. The relationship between virtù and fortune becomes one of the central themes of this philosophy. While fortune can shape circumstances, human skill and intelligence determine how effectively people respond to those circumstances. A wise leader does not simply accept whatever fortune brings. Instead, the leader prepares for challenges and takes decisive action to guide events in a favorable direction whenever possible. This balance between preparation and uncertainty creates a dynamic view of political life. Leadership is not a passive role. It requires constant attention, awareness, and the ability to adapt to changing conditions. A ruler must understand when to act with patience and when to act with speed. Waiting too long can allow problems to grow larger, but acting without careful thought can create new difficulties. Another important aspect of this philosophy involves the relationship between rulers and the people they govern. A stable state requires some degree of public support. Even powerful leaders cannot maintain authority indefinitely if the population becomes deeply hostile or rebellious. Because of this, rulers must consider how their actions affect the attitudes of their citizens. At the same time, public opinion can be unpredictable. People may admire a leader during times of success and blame the same leader during moments of hardship. Because of this uncertainty, a ruler must balance the desire to be loved with the necessity of maintaining authority. This leads to one of the most widely discussed ideas associated with this philosophy. It may sometimes be safer for a ruler to be feared than to be loved, if it is not possible to achieve both. Love depends on the voluntary feelings of others, and these feelings can change quickly. Fear, when managed carefully, creates a stronger and more stable form of obedience. However, fear must be used cautiously. If a ruler becomes widely hated, resentment may grow into rebellion. The goal is not cruelty, but stability. A wise leader avoids unnecessary violence and focuses instead on maintaining order and preventing disorder from spreading. Another important topic concerns the role of military strength. A state that depends entirely on the protection of others may become vulnerable. A strong and organized defense system allows a society to protect itself from external threats and maintain independence. Leaders who neglect this responsibility risk losing control when conflict arises. Through these reflections, the philosophy presents a realistic view of political life. Politics is not a simple struggle between good and evil or between virtue and corruption. Instead, it is a complex arena where power, human nature, chance, and leadership all interact. Understanding this complexity allows leaders to navigate difficult situations more effectively. This approach made the philosophy controversial because it challenged traditional expectations about moral leadership. Instead of describing how rulers should behave according to ideal principles, it focused on how rulers actually succeed or fail in the real world. By studying political life honestly rather than idealistically, the philosophy aimed to reveal the mechanisms that shape power and stability within societies. Through this realistic perspective, the foundation is established for a deeper exploration of political leadership, the role of institutions, and a relationship between human nature and the structure of government. As the examination of political life continues, attention turns toward the practical challenges that rulers face when trying to maintain stability within a state. A political leader does not operate in a peaceful and predictable environment. Instead, the world of politics is filled with uncertainty, rivalries, shifting alliances, and sudden dangers. Because of this reality, leadership requires careful judgment and the ability to respond quickly when circumstances change. One of the most important tasks for any ruler is securing power in a way that prevents constant instability. A leader who gains authority but fails to strengthen it will face continuous threats from rivals who wish to take control. In many societies, power changes hands frequently because leaders fail to create systems that protect their position and maintain order. To avoid this situation, a ruler must understand the conditions under which power is acquired. Some leaders rise through their own abilities and determination, while others inherit authority through family connections or gain it through the support of powerful groups. Each path creates different challenges. When someone rises to power through personal skill and determination, they often possess strong qualities of leadership and ambition. However, they may face resistance from those who previously held authority. These rivals may attempt to undermine the new ruler and restore the old system. Because of this danger, the new leader must act carefully to secure loyalty and prevent rebellion. Leaders who inherit power face a different situation. Inherited authority can appear stable because it follows established traditions. Citizens are accustomed to the ruling family and may accept their authority without much resistance. However, inherited rulers can become careless if they assume that tradition alone will protect them. If they fail to govern effectively or ignore the needs of the people, dissatisfaction may gradually grow. Another important challenge involves managing relationships with powerful groups within society. In many political systems, there are influential individuals or factions who possess wealth, military strength, or social influence. These groups can support a ruler, but they can also become dangerous opponents if their interests are threatened. Because of this, a wise leader must carefully balance the interests of different groups. Favoring one group too strongly may create resentment among others. At the same time, trying to satisfy everyone completely is impossible. Leadership often requires making difficult choices that benefit the stability of the state, even if some individuals are dissatisfied. This balancing act becomes even more complex when external threats appear. Neighboring states may compete for territory, influence, or resources. A ruler who ignores these dangers may leave the state vulnerable to invasion or political pressure. For this reason, maintaining a strong defense becomes essential. A state that depends entirely on foreign allies or hired soldiers can quickly find itself in trouble. If a society relies on outside forces to defend its interests, those forces may eventually pursue their own goals rather than protecting the state that hired them. Loyalty purchased with money can disappear when circumstances change. Because of this risk, it is far safer for a society to rely on its own citizens for defense. When the people themselves are responsible for protecting their country, their loyalty is stronger and their motivation clearer. Citizens who defend their own land and community are more likely to remain committed during difficult times. Strong military organization, therefore, becomes a key part of stable government. However, military power alone is not enough. A ruler must also maintain order within society by enforcing laws and discouraging crime or rebellion. If disorder spreads within the population, even a strong army may struggle to maintain control. This is why the careful use of punishment sometimes becomes necessary in political life. While excessive cruelty creates hatred, a certain level of firmness can prevent greater harm. When laws are enforced consistently and wrongdoing is addressed quickly, people understand the boundaries that maintain stability. Another challenge for leaders involves public perception. Citizens often judge rulers based on what they see and hear rather than on the hidden realities of political decision-making. Because of this, appearances can play a significant role in maintaining authority. A ruler who appears confident, decisive, and capable can inspire confidence among the population. However, appearances must be supported by genuine ability. Empty displays of strength without real competence will eventually fail when serious challenges arise. A successful leader combines effective action with an understanding of how those actions will be perceived by the public. The relationship between morality and political necessity also becomes more complicated at this stage of the philosophy. In an ideal world, leaders would always be able to act according to the highest moral principles. Yet the reality of politics sometimes presents situations where strict adherence to those ideals may lead to disaster. For example, a ruler who always acts with complete trust may be deceived by rivals who exploit that trust. A leader who refuses to act firmly against threats may allow disorder to grow until it becomes impossible to control. Because of these dangers, political leadership sometimes requires choices that are difficult from a moral perspective. This does not mean that cruelty or dishonesty should become the normal method of government. Instead, it means that leaders must understand when firmness or strategic deception may be necessary to protect the stability of the state. The goal remains the preservation of order and the safety of the community. Another important element of leadership involves adaptability. Political conditions rarely remain stable for long periods of time. Economic conditions may change, alliances may shift, and new threats may emerge unexpectedly. A leader who refuses to adjust to changing circumstances risks losing control. Successful rulers observe the conditions around them and modify their strategies when necessary. They recognize when patience is needed and when bold action becomes unavoidable. This ability to adapt allows them to navigate the unpredictable forces that shape political life. Through these reflections, a clearer picture of political leadership begins to emerge. Governing a state requires more than moral ideals or simple rules. It demands careful observation of human behavior, awareness of changing circumstances, and the courage to make difficult decisions when stability is at risk. Political life becomes a constant process of balancing different forces. A ruler must maintain authority without becoming hated, enforce order without unnecessary cruelty, and pursue stability while responding to the unpredictable influence of fortune. The success of leadership depends on the ability to manage these tensions with intelligence and determination. This practical approach to politics challenged earlier traditions that focused mainly on ideal models of leadership. Instead of imagining perfect rulers, the philosophy examines the real conditions under which power operates. By understanding these realities, leaders may improve their chances of maintaining stable and effective governments, even in a world filled with uncertainty and conflict. As the exploration of political leadership continues, attention begins to focus more deeply on the relationship between rulers and the people they govern. No government can remain stable for long without the support, or at least the acceptance, of the population. Even powerful rulers who possess armies and wealth must still consider the attitudes of their citizens. If dissatisfaction becomes widespread, rebellion or instability may eventually follow. Because of this, a wise ruler must pay close attention to how policies and actions affect the public. People generally desire two basic things from their government. They want security for their lives and property, and they want protection from being dominated or exploited by others. When these basic needs are met, citizens are more likely to support the political system and cooperate with its institutions. However, public opinion can be difficult to manage. People often judge events based on appearances rather than deeper understanding of political realities. A decision that protects the long-term stability of the state may appear harsh in the moment. At the same time, a generous decision that pleases the public temporarily may create greater problems in the future. For this reason, leaders must balance immediate popularity with long-term stability. It is sometimes necessary to make decisions that are not widely welcomed in the short term, but that protect the state from greater dangers. A ruler who focuses only on pleasing the population may lose the ability to maintain order when serious challenges appear. Another important aspect of leadership involves controlling the use of power carefully. Violence and punishment can sometimes be necessary to prevent disorder, but they must be used wisely. When force is applied without restraint, fear can quickly turn into hatred. A population that feels constantly oppressed may begin seeking opportunities to overthrow the government. Because of this, harsh actions should be limited and purposeful. When punishment is necessary, it should be carried out quickly and clearly so that people understand the reason behind it. Constant cruelty creates resentment, but decisive action that restores order can sometimes prevent greater harm from spreading through society. At the same time, acts of generosity should be approached carefully. A ruler who constantly distributes wealth or favors may gain short-term admiration, but may also weaken the financial stability of the state. Excessive generosity can lead to heavy taxation later, which often causes anger among the population. In this way, actions that appear kind at first may create greater dissatisfaction over time. This leads to the idea that moderation and careful planning are essential in political life. Leaders must consider not only how their actions appear today, but also how those actions will influence the future stability of state. Short-term success means little if it leads to long-term weakness. Another major theme in this philosophy concerns the importance of institutions. While individual rulers play an important role, stable governments usually depend on strong institutions that organize power and maintain order over time. Laws, administrative systems, and political traditions help create structure within society. When institutions are well designed, they reduce the risk that power will be abused by individuals. They provide clear procedures for resolving disputes, enforcing laws, and guiding political decisions. Without such systems, a society may become dependent entirely on the personality of its ruler, which creates instability whenever leadership changes. At the same time, institutions must remain flexible enough to adapt when circumstances change. A political system that refuses to evolve may struggle when new challenges arise. Economic shifts, technological developments, and changes in international relations can all reshape the conditions in which a society operates. Because of this, political systems must balance stability with adaptability. Strong traditions provide continuity, but leaders must also remain aware of new opportunities and dangers that require adjustments to existing structures. Another key idea in this philosophy involves the role of reputation in leadership. A ruler's reputation can influence how citizens and rival states respond to political decisions. A leader who is known for strength and determination may discourage enemies from attempting aggression. A reputation for weakness or hesitation may invite challenges. Reputation also shapes relationships within the state. Citizens are more likely to respect and obey leaders who appear capable and confident. However, reputation must be supported by real ability. If a ruler claims strength but repeatedly fails in difficult situations, the illusion of power quickly disappears. Because of this, leaders must combine appearance with substance. They must cultivate an image that inspires respect while also developing the practical skills necessary to manage real political challenges. Intelligence, awareness, and decisiveness become essential qualities for maintaining both authority and credibility. Another part of this philosophy examines how fortune interacts with human effort. As discussed earlier, fortune represents the unpredictable events that shape political life. No leader can control every circumstance. Unexpected disasters, wars, or economic changes may alter the situation rapidly. Yet fortune does not completely determine the outcome of events. Leaders who prepare carefully and remain adaptable can often limit the damage caused by unexpected developments. Just as a skilled navigator adjusts the sails when winds change, a capable ruler adjusts strategies when fortune shifts. This ability to adapt becomes one of the defining characteristics of effective leadership. Some rulers succeed during calm periods, but fail when conditions change. Others demonstrate the flexibility needed to survive difficult times and guide their societies through uncertainty. Through these reflections, a more complete picture of political life emerges. Leadership requires constant attention to human nature, public opinion, institutions, reputation, and the unpredictable forces of fortune. None of these elements can be ignored without risking instability. Politics becomes a field where moral ideals, practical necessity, and human ambition interact continuously. Understanding this complex environment allows leaders to make decisions that protect the stability of the state while navigating the challenges that inevitably arise in public life. By examining politics in this realistic way, the philosophy encourages leaders to observe the world carefully rather than relying on abstract theories. Only by understanding how people actually behave and how power truly operates can rulers hope to maintain order and guide their societies successfully through the uncertainties of history. As the philosophy reaches its final stage, the overall vision of political life becomes clearer. The central concern has always been stability and survival of the state in a world where human behavior is unpredictable and circumstances change constantly. Political leadership is not a simple matter of following moral ideals or rigid rules. Instead, it requires understanding the realities of power, the ambitions of human beings, and the unpredictable forces that influence events. A ruler must always remember that political authority exists within a fragile environment. Even strong governments can collapse if they fail to adapt to changing conditions. A society may appear stable for many years, but if leaders become careless or ignore emerging problems, disorder can develop quickly. Because of this, the preservation of the state must remain the primary responsibility of political leadership. This does not mean that rulers should ignore morality entirely, but it does mean that political decisions must sometimes be guided by necessity rather than idealism. A leader who refuses to take difficult actions when circumstances demand them may unintentionally create greater harm. If disorder spreads or external enemies gain strength, the suffering of the population may become far worse than the consequences of a firm decision made earlier. The central challenge for leadership, therefore, becomes learning how to balance morality with political necessity. Excessive cruelty or deception can destroy trust and create hatred among the people. Yet excessive kindness or hesitation can weaken authority and allow chaos to develop. A successful ruler must navigate between these extremes, using wisdom and careful judgment to determine which actions best protect the stability of the state. Another important lesson concerns the importance of preparation. A ruler who waits until a crisis appears before taking action may already be too late. Many problems grow slowly over time, and wise leaders recognize early signs of danger before they become uncontrollable. By addressing difficulties at their beginning, a government can often avoid much greater conflicts later. Preparation also involves building strong institutions and maintaining capable defenses. A state that relies entirely on temporary alliances or hired soldiers may find itself vulnerable when loyalty shifts. When citizens themselves are invested in the protection of their country and its institutions, the state becomes far more resilient. The philosophy also emphasizes the importance of adaptability in leadership. Every political environment is different, and circumstances change over time. Strategies that succeed in one situation may fail in another. A ruler who refuses to adjust to new conditions risks losing control when fortune changes direction. Fortune continues to play a powerful role in human affairs. Unexpected events, such as natural disasters, economic shifts, or sudden conflicts can disrupt even the most carefully planned systems. Yet fortune does not completely control outcomes. Leaders who possess intelligence, courage, and flexibility can respond to these events in ways that limit damage and sometimes even turn difficulties into opportunities. This relationship between human effort and fortune becomes one of the defining features of successful leadership. While no one can predict every event, wise preparation and decisive action allow rulers to influence the direction of events rather than simply being controlled by them. Another key idea in this philosophy concerns reputation and perception. Political authority depends not only on actual power, but also on how that power is viewed by others. Citizens, allies, and rivals all form judgments about a ruler's strength and character. These perceptions influence how people respond to political decisions. A leader who appears weak or indecisive may encourage opposition and rebellion. On the other hand, a reputation for strength and competence can discourage enemies from taking risks. Because of this, rulers must understand how their actions shape public perception. Maintaining respect and credibility becomes an important part of governing effectively. At the same time, a wise leader understands that appearances alone are not enough. True authority must be supported by real ability and sound judgment. Empty displays of power may impress people temporarily, but they cannot replace the practical skills required to manage a state. Another theme that emerges from this philosophy is the importance of understanding human nature. People are capable of loyalty and cooperation, but they are also influenced by fear, ambition, and personal interest. A political system that ignores these realities may fail when individuals act according to their own desires rather than according to ideal expectations. Because of this, leadership requires constant awareness of how people behave under different circumstances. Policies must be designed with an understanding of both human strengths and human weaknesses. By anticipating how individuals are likely to respond, rulers can create systems that maintain stability even when conflict arises. The overall message of this philosophy is often misunderstood as encouraging ruthless behavior in politics. In reality, its purpose is to reveal the practical realities of governing in an imperfect world. Instead of imagining how politics should function under ideal conditions, it examines how power actually operates in real societies. By studying history, observing human behavior, and analyzing the successes and failures of past rulers, political leaders can learn valuable lessons about maintaining stability. These lessons help them avoid mistakes that have caused governments to collapse in the past. Through this realistic approach, the philosophy presents politics as a field shaped by human ambition, shifting circumstances, and the constant interaction between leadership and fortune. Governing successfully requires intelligence, courage, adaptability, and a clear understanding of the world as it truly is. In the end, the central lesson becomes clear. A ruler who wishes to preserve the state must understand the realities of power and human nature. Idealistic hopes alone cannot maintain stability, but careful observation, wise preparation, and decisive leadership can guide a society through uncertainty and protect it from chaos. This perspective transformed the way political thinkers approach the study of government. By focusing on real human behavior rather than ideal theories, the philosophy created a new way of examining leadership, power, and the structure of political life. Even centuries later, these ideas continue to influence discussions about politics, leadership, and the difficult choices that arise when governing complex societies.